Hola a todos. Bueno, vamos a comenzar. So, hello everyone. I will switch to English. It is a pleasure for me to introduce our esteemed guest, with whom Josefina and I had the privilege of spending some lovely days just a few months ago in Chicago during the MCHAP Emerge activities. And now it's a delight to welcome you all in Buenos Aires. I'll keep this brief. So first, Dirk Denison.
Hi.
He has been a professor for more than 30 years at the IIT College of Architecture, and he runs his own firm, Dirk Denison Architects, based in Chicago. And he's the director, of course, of the Mies Crown Hall Americas Prize. And as members of the jury of this fifth cycle of MCHAP, Giovanna Borasi is an architect, editor, and curator. She joined the Canadian Center for Architecture in 2005, initially as curator of contemporary architecture from 2005 to 2010, later as chief curator from 2014 and to 2019, and since 2020 as the director of the CCA. Gregg Pasquarelli is the founding principal of Shop Architects, and he has served as the Saarinen Professor of Architecture at Yale University, and has also held teaching positions at Columbia University, the University of Virginia, Syracuse University, and the University of Florida. Sofía von Ellrichshausen is the founder, together with Mauricio Pezo, of the art and architecture studio Pezo von Ellrichshausen. She is the Louis Kahn visiting professor at Yale University, and she has been professor of the practice at Cornell University, and visiting professor at GSD Harvard University, the IIT in Chicago, and the Universidad Católica de Chile. She's the author of Poli House, the winning project of the first MCHAP for emerging practice in 2014. And finally, Mauricio Rocha is the founder of Taller de Arquitectura, and he has been a professor at the Faculty of Architecture of the UNAM, the Universidad Anahuacalli, and the Universidad Iberoamericana. He is the author of the 2023 MCHAP winning project, the renovation of the Museo Anahuacalli in Ciudad de México. So please welcome all.
Juan, thank you very much. I can't really describe how excited we are to be here in Buenos Aires and to be here in Argentina. It is such a source of amazing creativity. And I want to just say congratulations to all of you for your contributions. It's making the world a better place. I have the great privilege of being here representing the College of Architecture at IIT in Chicago, the storied campus with our namesake Crown Hall as our architecture school. So wonderful to be welcomed here. And thanks to Florencia for organizing our visit and our proceedings, and also a reception. We hope you will all join afterwards. I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about MCHAP in general, the programming, why we do it, and what our objectives are. And then I will ask each of the jury to share their experience. We started almost a year ago, and I will tell you as we show illustrations of the process, but an amazing commitment that each of us have made to helping us find those ideas and the issues and the solutions behind them that we as an initiative are in the job of sharing with the world. I want to thank not only Juan, but Josefina also for their winning finalist project. And we were so excited to actually visit it yesterday. Beautiful, gorgeous. And they were in Chicago in September. And they participated in our conference as well. So congratulations, if I can ask for your And we also have with us Lucas and Alejo, who are our finalist winners from 2 years ago. Where are you guys in the room? You're in the back over there. If you guys can wave, and may I have a round of applause for them for their we at MCHAP are very much about creating a family of individuals, and a family of conversations. And we're hoping that this meeting today will be the beginning of fruitful thoughts about how we can collaborate as institutions and as individuals. I think most importantly today, I am so honored to have Pancho here, Pancho Lenore, who was one of those that believed in us from the beginning. I'm sorry, I'm a little choked up. 12 years we've been doing this. And those guys that were there the first time had no idea. What are you talking about, MCHAP? You know, what does this strange word mean that we're putting together? And he was brave enough to say, sounds like it's worth being part of, and was on our initial jury. So to be here back at, if I may, at your school is wonderful, full fruition. So please applause for Pancho. Just in the context of today, I have a number of my team with us. Jayhawk Reese Julian is here. Jayhawk is part of a program we have postgraduate, where a student will spend, a graduated student will spend 2 years focused on the MCHAP cycle. And so he's been part of all of the preparations. And in this part of the trip, he's actually working as the sound man and assistant to Pablo Gerson, who many of you will know because he's on your faculty and is a home child, and who's been our videographer, an important addition to our programming. So thanks to both of you for being here and for widening the visibility of MCHAP. And I don't know if Tyler's, and there's Tyler. Okay, Tyler Waldorf is our jury coordinator. It's quite complicated because we move around, we go quickly, as Pancho knows, and we kind of come in and we go out, and we come in and we go out. And then actually next, so Tyler, thank you for making this all happen. We will be announcing 1 week from Friday, the 7th of February, from the Anahuacalli Museum, the Mauricio Rocha design winning the last MCHAP, the Americas prize. We'll be announcing the finalists for this year's prize. And then all of them will come to Chicago for our event in May. And I'll start now and repeat at the end. You are all welcome to come to participate in that larger workshop and symposium where we talk about the ideas of what's happening in the Americas at this particular moment in time. So without further ado, Crown Hall is our home. Let's see if I can get this to work. I've kind of talked about our mission, but the mission, of course, is to share design excellence and to share those stories that illustrate that design makes a difference to the quality of our lives. We have 2 prizes, the Emerge, which I've just spoken to. You have the two finalists winners. We consider all of the finalists winners from the last 2 cycles are from here. And we have the Americas prize. This is the main prize. It's sort of our shorthand for what we're calling the difference. The difference is that the first 10 years of practice and no limitation. So actually, just from a procedural standpoint, a project could be nominated for this prize, but only those that are in the first early stages. We have a network of nominators. Our prize is anonymously nominated. So you can't send your work in, and the prize goes to projects. They go to built works. So we have a constantly evolving conversation with people who care about the built environment, people care about the quality of what man is doing with the earth. And those people are architects, but many of them are curators or museum curators. We have a chef, we have a number of studio artists who help us find the work. They're each allowed to nominate up to five projects within a 2-year time span. And when the jury is assembled, the jury is, as you see here, represents geography, represents gender, represents kind of focus from a professional and academic standpoint, as But we don't give them a specific criteria. We're not a prize that says it has to be focused on sustainability, or it has to be focused on material science or the systems of construction, or it has to be focused on the impact to community. We leave it to the jury and the selection of these amazing minds to define that for each cycle. And that's why we're assembled today, to hear some insight into what they found from the group of projects that were nominated by another group of people that were given to them to navigate to the point of illumination. You can see here a group of topics that have been past conversations of juries, and that have ranged from the subjects I spoke about, as well as just simply housing, neighborhoods, vision, and power of design. This is our great cross-section of the jury. We have actually had 4 members from Argentina on the juries, and we were really excited that Monica Verdolino could join us last night. She came in to say hello, meet the new jury, and that she continues to be a valued part of our family. The finalists in the first 7 prized projects, you can see just from here, if you know our history, the diversity of locations, building type, scale. We started in the year 2012, but we actually chronicled all the way back to 2000. So this first cycle was actually a big group of years that were considered. And it is a bit of a conceit, the idea of acknowledging architecture at the beginning of the 21st century. The finalist for 18 to 22 is here. You can see Mauricio's work amongst them that was premiated to the Americas Prize. Same time exposure with the Emerging Prize, and the finalist here as well, showing the housing project here in Buenos Aires. Just a quick review, going back to Poli House, as Juan mentioned, Pezo von Ellrichshausen were the authors of the first Emerge Prize. It was actually the first prize we awarded, because the Emerge we give before the main prize. But in this cycle, we actually gave 2 Americas Prize, one for the first 8 years of the 20th century, and then one for 4, between the Herzog and Duran and the CISA. So it explains in this another part of our operating system. The projects are on the soil of North and South America, but the architects are actually not really considered in the process. So the architects can be from anywhere in the world. It is their work, it's the product of their labor, and the realization of it. One of the criterias the jury looks at is performance, how the buildings are functioning, and that's why we visit. And second cycle, third cycle, fourth cycle, and now we're in the 5th cycle. And this all is taking place under the umbrella of our objective as an organization. We are we're part of a school. I think that there are many prizes of architecture, but I think in terms of the breadth of our prize, we're one of the few that is international in scope, that's in an academic institution. And teaching both within our school as well as those programs like today, we consider this an important part of the programming of the prize. Research and publications, the networking of conversations, our research and development. We raise philanthropically all of the money to operate the prize from individuals and organizations who are philanthropic. And then, like Jayhawk, we have programs for scholarships and fellowships. During the year, those take place in the studio. The Emerge winners receive a teaching appointment at IIT, but we've had many of the Americas Prize winners teaching as well, and many of the finalists as well as the winners of the prize. They speak, public lecture, online and in person. And then both the winning prize and the Emerge Prize receive a stipend $25,000 and $50,000 towards a publication, research and a publication. And we've published now 6 books with 3 more underway. Rosanna Montiel, Sana, even though they're from the second cycle, we're finally doing their book, which is on their construction material, construction detailing and materiality. And then we also do a series of MCHAP, the Americas, which is the jury's findings. So it chronicles all of the projects that are nominated. Here on the table here in front of me is the Americas territories and expeditions, looking at what we share throughout the Americas and what is regional, which we're very proud. It's a beautiful book edited by Florencia Rodriguez, who you guys may know, who is also Argentine and from here, and happens to be the wife of someone in the room. So we have a really great relationship with Argentina, and so it makes it extra special that we're here. We also do publications each year where we partner with a magazine to publish the winners of the prize. Coming back, your event will be added to this list. You can see at the bottom, we started in Montreal, Canada at the Canadian Center for Architecture. Our second prize announcement was in Santiago, Chile, Mexico City, Detroit, and last 2 years ago was in Medellin, Colombia. We also have exhibition program, which starts with the exhibition in Crown Hall on the upper left there, but we've also had wonderful other partnerships, the Chicago Architecture Biennial and the Art Institute of Chicago, who's worked with us on exhibitions. We're set up with a board, oversight, faculty, and also professional advising and wonderful commitments to fundraising that build to that. So this is the cycle we're in right now. So these are projects that are completed in 2021 and 22. And we moved the schedule back a little bit. So we really want all the work to be finished for at least a year, so that by the time we visit the projects, they're up and functioning. We had about 260 nominated projects for this year's Americas Prize, of which the jury was charged with creating a short list of 43 projects. And from this short list, they selected those projects they wanted to come and visit in person. And so that's why we're here. We're not announcing anything today, but that's why we're here in Buenos Aires today. And these are the locations of where those projects are. If you notice, the circle that is over where we are standing right now is quite large, and that's showing the amount of creativity that was represented from your base here. Here is that jury 1 year ago in action in Chicago, starting with the didactic installation of the jury of projects. We created a digital interface that's identical for all the projects, so it's not about the presentation. These are built works, and the architects, the architectural design team, the design team, because these are landscape projects, infrastructure projects, transportation, as well as buildings. They can choose up to 12 images that fit within this standard to give everyone the same base. And then they have to write didactic essays on the context, on the brief, and the program, and then the performance of their buildings. During that time, while the jury is there are wonderful gatherings, and more we're making this an international stage where we come together. We grew our Emerge Prize this fall into being a 3-day conference focused on those issues that critical practice, emerging critical process wants to engage. Part of that award ceremony, we created a new prize this year in the name of Phyllis Lambert, who actually hosted us at the Canadian Center for Architecture, along with Giovanna, its director, when we launched the MCHAP 12 years ago. And it was given to the Mexican Secretary of the Interior, Roman Meyer, for his work in creating the Sedatu projects, over 900 built works in 6 years, all in communities spread out through Mexico. These are our finalists for cycle 5, and you see the housing familiar to you here. And then the winning project was in Ecuador, which was a facility built by the occupants, a group of women who didn't have a place to gather, and where they created industry in and around their weaving. The jury travels to the projects in person. And as I mentioned, we've had this great privilege to work with Pablo on recording it all. One of the things that we've now produced is that each of the projects gets a video from us about the jury visit and about the insight that was gained. That is one of the gifts that they received from us, as well as a much larger video on the whole cycle that we present to the world through our website. Here is the jury. We are, as you one introduced already, Gregg Pasquarelli is the founding partner of MCHAP, who his firm has, from our idiom in working in the US, probably grappled with the realities of building material, construction process, space and site and economics in the most creative, for work at their scale, most creative practice in the United States. And we're thrilled to have Gregg on the jury, bringing he does teach. All of our jury teach, although practice as well. Giovanna is, of course, the director of the Canadian Center for Architecture, who brings both curatorial and editorial, as well as research to the conversation. Mauricio Rocha, as was mentioned, is the winner of our last prize. When someone was describing the amazing creativity that's going on in Mexico right now, I asked the question, why do you think that's happened? And someone in the group said, they all studied with Mauricio. So he's maestro from a Mexican standpoint. And then Sofía von Ellrichshausen, obviously you know her well, and it's been an amazing journey. Sofía and Pezo taught with us for 4 years in Chicago and have continued to be an amazing part of our voice. And Maurice Cox is the chair of our jury. Since he was appointed, was named, since he joined the jury, was named the Bloomberg Professor of Urban Design at Harvard. And today is his first class. So he was not able to be with us today, but he sends his best greetings and will be joining us again before the end of the jury. So with that, I have completed the overview of MCHAP. I'm happy to have more conversation with you when we have a cocktail after. But at this point, I'd like to turn it over to the jury for their insight into the works that they discovered. While we do that, we'll be just profiling those outstanding projects kind of in a random run for you to see the cross-section of what's being considered. So I'm thinking if, Sofía, would you take the role to start off? Okay, great.
Is this, yes, it's working, right? Yes. Okay, so this is very awkward for me to be speaking in English and feeling like a tourist in Buenos Aires. But I think, yes, we stay in English. Yeah, I'm happy to. Well, how can I start? If ever any of you gets invited to be part of this, please accept. It's a fantastic energy of optimism in our discipline. The periods any project takes, as you all know, are long and many times quite painful and many times very lonely. So the fact that suddenly you are exposed or thrown into an Olympic pool of fantastic projects that range from all kinds of weathers, economies, cultures within the Americas is already overwhelming, just to have to look carefully at all of that. So for us, that has been a very difficult task because you're comparing so many different situations and at first from a distance. But maybe one thing I can highlight of our experience is that there's definitely a very refreshing and heartwarming sense of changing things. You know, I think all of us who studied more in the 90s or even before that, notions of success for an architect were evaluated, I think, mostly in different terms. So at least for me, it has been fantastic to be faced to not only very beautiful solutions, buildings that are intelligent ways of dealing with the context, but also a new understanding of what success means in this long-term career of ours. It's not a sprint, it's a really long race. And so what do younger and older people think about ways to not only establish a practice, a team, some kind of leadership in our small communities or large communities, whatever it might be, but also the time lapses of a project, what a project is supposed to do in the places they're located. So there have been, I mean, it's hard to, we cannot name any specific project, but we have been exposed to fantastic solutions, fantastic ideas, fantastic ways of working. And now with the traveling, you corroborate that projects have much more than just a visual dimension or a floor plan or a section. And to see that they are always this very large corroboration of many, many factors. So I don't know, maybe, and all of us are going to make some comments of our experience through this traveling and process. Also, we become now almost a family because I don't know what's going to happen when we finish this, because this already has been how many trip number, I don't know, day number, whatever. We've been several times meeting in different places and traveling. And I think you get hooked to this good quality architecture. And one other thing I want to say, sorry, now I will pass the microphone, but also, apart from the prize, which has been this incredible saturation of optimism, I must say that we spent now 48 hours in Buenos Aires, and it's been, even coming here, no, and seeing the energy, inverse energy right now, right? It's going downwards, but we know it's going to burst upwards, of building, of publications, of research, of the city, the projects we've been visiting. It's really, I cannot think of a better way to spend time traveling. So thank you to everyone who's received us.
Is this working? So very nice to be back here. Sorry, I lost my voice from where I come, and here there are 60 degrees Celsius difference. So that was a bit traumatic, positively traumatic, but my voice got lost. Yeah, I can only echo what Sofia said in terms of how amazing this experience is, and at the same time how challenging it is. We were confronted with 280 projects, 256 projects, and so I think the incredible opportunity is, first of all, to see them and think the way the prize work for me is like will be an observatorio, and saying on the last 2 years, this is what interesting projects are. Obviously is through the nomination. So obviously he's already a kind of selected group of things, but still you have this kind of a very general, you know, tarot speaking, I don't know, of the quality of architecture. And the kind of very interesting idea, especially in a moment where, you know, a lot of walls and barriers are making the Americas divided. I think to think about an award that is really considering from Canada to here and is using architecture to go beyond this diversity, I think is a very interesting way of thinking the future. So it's not only about the optimism that we see in the project. I think the ideology of the prize is very interesting. Now the challenge is to then, you come confronted with things that are in different places, different budget, different way of thinking, different cultures. And obviously also the jury has their own different values and the way they come from. And the other opportunities that we had, as Dirk said, is that we are not, from the beginning, is that the jury should decide what are their criteria, and somehow the criteria do not come with us already thinking, oh, this is my idea of architecture. It comes from, we have to work with what we have been offered by the nominators. So somehow the criteria needs to emerge from the project itself. So this is why I think it's an interesting observatorial, because this is not abstract. It's not like that we are saying, oh, these are the things important now. It is like, what does all 256 projects are sort of like pushing as things, and what are. And so through all our discussion, I think, and I'm improvising here because some of the things we have discussed, but I'm kind of sharing what I think some of the quality. I think both through the overall selection, so both the kind of emerging and the main prize, I think the relation with the community is certainly a kind of very important component. When I say community, might be the community that is connected to the kind of direct users of the building, or the community that benefits the kind of neighborhood, or can be human, non-human, like that. That's, I think, overall has been some of the things that we have used also to kind of go through that. And then and then obviously the kind of environmental issue, kind of housing crisis, beside, the kind of interesting idea of architectural formal aspects of it, and so on. So also, in a way, I was saying there is a lot of very good architecture in this part of the world. And so we have been challenged of the fact that this should really represent the Americas, but at the same time, you have seen from the nomination, we have a much more nominated project in this part of the Americas, so also trying to understand, like, many questions, like why there are not maybe so many interesting projects up in the north. And so that has been also, again, a kind of observation of like how the practice is changing, or like where are the emerging voices. And so in a way, it's also true that the prize is an observatorial, needs also to respect what is the kind of reality of it. So so we are still discussing a lot, and very far from taking any decision. We still have many projects to see. But that's, I think, for now, what I can share.
I'd like to continue on that thought. I mean, I think it's been incredibly interesting for me. It's been a tough 4 years, with the pandemic and the economies and the political situations, things that have been going on. And, our practice has changed, where we're now building around the world, and maybe we spend a lot of time focusing on those projects, traveling to those projects, focusing on keeping our practices going, focusing on what the challenges are that are put in front of us. And then to have the absolute gift of days and days and days of just seeing what's going on around the world was an amazing experience for me.
And I think it really opened my eyes to how much phenomenal work is happening in Central and South America. I mean, I honestly, really, I think it was much of the best work that I've seen in decades. And so that, it was incredibly exciting. It's been also a privilege to come here to Buenos Aires, which I really loved, you know, probably because it's mostly Italian food. But there's a spirit here that I see, you know. It's really hard in New York to build now. But 30 years ago, there was still a kind of rawness, a kind of ability for a young architect to create their own projects, to get a group together, to find a piece of property, to invent a new technology, to put something together. And I mean, that was honestly the genesis of shop architects and how we did it. We had to be our own developers at the very beginning. And I see that opportunity here. In Argentina, and I see that excitement in a way that you guys are just kind of making it happen, and that's really inspirational in a lot of ways. And so I love that gives, I think, opportunity for young architects to take those risks and to push and to try and get these things built. And it's from that difficulty that I think that best creativity comes. So it's been very inspirational for me to see all of this work and to travel to it and to have the luxury of time to look at it and the camaraderie with my phenomenal fellow jurors and everyone running the prize, and to meet so many people around the world. And then I think most importantly, apparently 3 of my projects were in the group but got disqualified because I was on the jury. And I looked at our boards, and our boards were really shit. They were really bad. So what I've learned now is how to do the board much better for the next cycle. So if anyone wants to know, you could talk to me afterwards at the thing.
Voy a cambiar yo para hablar en español para...
I only understand your Spanish.
¿Y qué más era? Bueno. Para entender esta idea de las dos lenguas que vivimos. Bueno, pues a mí me toca como también hablar un poco de... Me tocó vivir el ser seleccionado y vivir todo ese proceso hasta el final y tener la suerte de haber ganado. Y ahora me toca estar del otro lado en la reflexión de cómo seleccionar. A mí me parece que vivido desde un lado y del otro, este premio, esta gran iniciativa de hacer un premio de un edificio, un espacio que funcione desde Canadá hasta la Patagonia, si es algo que bien habían intentado hay una serie de manifestaciones en otras bienales como la de Quito, como la Bienal iberoamericana, que no toca la parte de Estados Unidos y Canadá. Esta ha logrado de manera muy contundente lograr el entendimiento completo y con algo fundamental, que es un premio que permite no solamente seleccionar desde las fotografías, sino poder visitar las obras, lo cual hace la diferencia absoluta, porque creo que la arquitectura no es un tema de la imagen, sino es un tema de la experiencia, de lo que se vive y de lo que construye con respecto a la ciudad o el campo o el contexto en el que se encuentre. En efecto, como dicen todos, nos hemos encontrado con diferentes acciones y reacciones de arquitecturas en diferentes partes del continente. Eso lo enriquece mucho cuando es jurado ver todo eso. Y también, obviamente, a la hora de también vivirlo y verlo, nos hace reflexionar mucho de lo que está pasando hoy día en la arquitectura. También es cierto, vivimos un momento y el premio de MCHAP coincide con un momento donde existe una crisis económica mundial y que también hizo transformar la idea de cómo entendemos la arquitectura, de esta idea de la arquitectura que definía ciudades por este gran edificio que por iniciativa de gobernadores o de gente, a una realidad que nos ha permitido tener una mayor visibilidad de lo que sucede en la arquitectura latinoamericana, que tiene que ver con el músculo de la crisis, que tiene que ver con cómo reaccionar o cómo hacer arquitectura con diferentes condiciones. Y esa visibilidad que da también las redes sociales o los medios que nos hace ver arquitecturas en todas partes, creo que si alguien, si algún premio tiene hoy día la oportunidad de reflejarlo y de ponerlo en un sitio, es el premio Mies y el premio MCHAP. Y desde ese lugar se ha logrado tener un panorama muy fuerte, muy contundente de lo que está pasando en todo el continente. Y en ese sentido estricto, creo que además creo que es importante decir que uno de los intereses fundamentales del premio es también la construcción académica. Hay una relación muy fuerte con que es un premio que está soportado y empujado por una escuela de arquitectura y que permite y habla de cómo seguir dialogando con los alumnos y entre todos los integrantes de la comunidad arquitectónica para pensar y redefinir qué está sucediendo con la arquitectura hoy día. Entonces yo creo que premios como este es un orgullo ser parte de él, como en este caso como jurado, en esta reflexión, es como un compromiso importante, fuerte para llegar a buenas conclusiones, sobre todo de que este panorama, porque creo que el premio no solamente es un ganador, sino es los outstandings y luego los finalistas, y si vemos y reflejamos en los diferentes momentos que se ha dado anteriormente, ya dan de sí una referencia importante, no solamente en nuestro continente, sino hacia afuera, hacia los otros continentes, de lo que está pasando por acá, ¿no? Entonces, creo que hay que felicitar, we have to make a felicitation to MCHAP, what is happening, ¿no? Es muy importante. He's taking Duolingo en Spanish, so. No, no, bueno, solo es eso. O sea, realmente es un premio serio, muy serio, y que se ha tomado con mucha importancia y que es un ejemplo para que desde ese lugar haya más iniciativas que ayuden a repensar la arquitectura en nuestro planeta y en este continente ya se está haciendo de una muy buena manera.
Maybe if I can add precisely to the point of I don't know what language to speak now. Me mataste. No, but one I think of we've spoken like how important it is, and every one of us who's involved in teaching knows this, that it is a very confusing world out there for young students. There's so much information circulating, and there's also so many prices circulating, many of which mean nothing beyond business for a lot of people. No? So I think having a prize like this that is not about, professionals just tapping on our shoulders, is about trying to generate an archive, a clear vision, responsible selection of what's going on is fundamental. It's fundamental for young students. And all of us who are involved in that exchange, suddenly to have a place to direct students to and to say, okay, if you want to go through archival work, this is really, it's almost impossible, of course, to capture a whole continent, no? But I think what is very interesting is that you can extract a certain sensibility. And what is, I think, very interesting in that sense is that also the axis of what you were just mentioning, Greg, that the axis of who seems to be proposing maybe the most accurate solutions or maybe the most sensible sensible, yeah, both. Solutions to the problems we're facing is no longer emerging from the epicenters that used to be the epicenters. And so the fact that suddenly the discussion becomes so transversal, regardless of resources, I think that that kind of sensibility is fundamental for young generations to be exposed to.
Yeah, I agree completely. I mean, I think if you're only looking at billion-dollar plus projects as things that need to be paid attention to, I think you're losing a tremendous amount. That actually, I think much more raw, important ideas come from that struggle of how to just take materials and solve a problem and do it beautifully and elegantly. And I don't think it really ever has to do with money. You know, whatever the budget is you're given or you invent or whatever it is, it's what you're able to do with that makes it beautiful, to me at least. So, you know, I think that you're right. It's not just what gets attention in the press. So prizes like this and juries like this and moments like this and getting people together reminds us that it's in every spot that there's incredible creativity. And that's really important. Like if you have $500, make it a great piece of architecture. You could do it.
We should be open to taking questions. Yeah, if there's anyone like a question. Will you do this? Yes, thank you.
Hello. Maria Gonzalez, head of the Students Committee of the Architects Central Society. You've been through a lot of countries in America. And in Argentina, we can say that there has never been an architectural movement. We can say that maybe there was a school of architects or architects that made a school, like Lemonnier, Amancio Williams, Bonnet, etc. Testa, we can continue. But in the last decades, at least I and me and for the things I've talked with my friends, there's no architect school in Argentina. I don't know how you see that. How you've been? How is this in other countries? Because you can be at least a decade without a school of architects, but it has, at least for me, it has been 20, 30, 40 years without a school of architects. There are, of course, very good architects. Adam Fiden, Krug, there are a lot of good architects, but there's no one that has made at least a bit of school, or not school, because they teach a lot of things, but there's no a clear school like the 70s or 80s that there was a big school with Sanchez Gomez, Viñol, etc. What are your thoughts on that? Thank you.
I think you're very lucky. Like, I think it's really difficult to, come out of shadows of huge names. And maybe this is at least what I was referring to when I was saying this different idea of success. Like that young people, I think your generation are lucky enough that there's no big shadows, no? And that maybe the big names that are emerging now or the important names that are emerging have no longer such a strong sense of authority and persona, so that there is a, at least this is my perception, and I'm very happy about that. I feel that it's much more about understanding that our discipline is not starting with any of us, right? We keep passing information to each other. We keep learning from each other. So the more exchange we can have, because every project of architecture is always new, but the solutions are a combination of everything that is old and that has passed. So the more we see, the more we exchange, the more we share ideas, the more we learn, no? And the less dogmas we have about what are the right ideas, because every commission is a new thing. So I feel that I think it's fantastic that there's no big movement, no big name, but that there's like a big sense of generosity from one colleague to the other. That's I think the new movement.
I think it's too early to know what will happen. I say to the students sometimes that you need like 10 or 20 years to know what's happening in the scenario of architecture. So maybe it's not good to buy some books of people that is doing something now, but 20 years and more is excellent, because then you know what is happening with the time, no? It's early. It's true that with the time, you will see that it's strong personalities in architecture. Something happened. It's happened similar situation in some architects. We will see. But the important thing, as Sofia say, is how come the generosity of academics and talking about many things is happening, and with that, we will see with the time. Well,
I mean, what you see of an architect and what you know of an architect was happening like 15 years before in their office, right? Because you're experimenting, you're thinking about things, you're thinking about materials, you're testing them, you're trying to get them built. You can't get them built in this one. You try a different version a couple of years later then maybe it starts to catch, you start to figure it out, and then it gets approved as a project, and then it takes a decade to build it, and then it gets published, and then it gets sent around the world. And by the time it's here, that was what you were doing 15 years ago, right? And that's kind of amazing. In a world where information travels so quickly, architecture is still slow in a way. And I find that to be very interesting. Probably because it behooves me in the sense that you hit your prime as an architect from like 55 to 75, because it takes that long in a lot of ways, which is great, right? Because, you know, if we were in the NBA, we'd be all washed up by now. So it's like or a banker, like an investment banker hits their peak at 40. If you haven't done anything if you haven't made it by 40, you're dead, right? You're out. But like architecture, people really, you don't hit your prime until your late 50s, 60s, and 70s, which is kind of remarkable. There are very few professions in the world that do that. And you have to think about that. But yet, I think that what you said, it's like, it's not only post-structuralist, it's post-dogma is literally, and we were just talking about this with a bunch of the deans at the US schools, that in the post-dogma world, like, I think we're just flooded with so much information, and there's no like team to be on. Like there used to be teams, you were either on that guy, you were that guy and you were against them, and you were this guy and you were against them. And like, it was an oversimplification. And I think with the flood of information, which is so quick, but relative to a profession that's so slow, it creates a kind of void. But as Sophia said, I think that's an opportunity for all young architects. There's a question here.
Yeah, I think you are in a, thank you very much. I think you're in a very good position because you are actually due to this necessity of taking into account the whole scenario. I think my question is, how do you see this? Do you see that people thinking together, architects thinking together, more or less the same or intuition or the same way of thinking? Or this is what I understand in the way you understand. I understand your question because maybe I belong to the transitional generation between you and those other big names. And then my question is, what do you see in the bigger scenario, in the panorama? What do you see? People thinking together or just independent actions separately, and you can link them like the spirit of the era or whatever. You know what I mean? Yeah. What do you see? This is my question.
Well, maybe I just also try to respond also to the previous question. I don't know what you wish for, because to me, if you think examples of, if I refer to Europe, where I come from, there are these moments. At one point, it was all about Portuguese architecture. Then it's over. Then is all the Dutch moment, and it's over. Then now are the Belgian, and it's over. So are you really wishing for a kind of moment where, but that will be a turn. At one point you will be at the peak and then will not be. So I'm not sure you want to do this idea of school in that way. And I think what everyone said is a more interesting way of thinking of like, if there is a kind of critical mass of interesting practices, then now in conversation, then it's a more fertile land for everyone, more than kind of few individuals that they become the school of. Personally, that will be my answer. What I think the challenge is through this, and I think the publication do it well, of trying to kind of summarize the, what we have been exposed to. Like, as I said, like it will be like if you are at home, someone made bought the food for you, put it in the fridge, and you open the fridge and you have to prepare dinner with, I don't know, strawberries, mozzarella, steak, like this is what we have been given. And now we have to kind of make a rationale of that. And the typology of soft project that we have been seeing, and so this is also an expanded idea of the word. It's not just architecture, like you've seen some of the example. It might be a landscapes project, it might be a public space, it might like, so the idea also that architecture is through the Americas is understood as a very different practice is also part of the conversation, it's not just the act of building, is also all other kind of things. And a word is to the project. So actually what we also meet are the clients, are the users. And that's also the reason why is also the project needs to be operating for 1 year. So we want to see the project in use. We want to understand if it's actually that's what the architect has imagined. So I think, to me, overall, I think, the formal answer is very different because of all kind of reason, budget, climate, the schools are really making the architect practice very different. But I think there are very similar preoccupation. And as I was saying before, at least what I start to see is this kind of community engaging. And because also of the way we have seen the project, somehow between the user and the client, you already start to see the project through that alliance between the creators. So the creators is not just the architect, it's also, who puts the money in or puts the program in and so on. So for sure, that's also a divide, like projects that are kind of like not have that good mix at the beginning. I don't think they even make it to the nomination, because you have to have that bit of a story of success already, So that I think is a commune nominator that somehow maybe is kind of giving a certain idea of also quality architecture, of that all those things are together important. That's my temporary answer.
Today, for example, in one hand, it's a good news that is a lot of architecture going to the rural places, going for people that doesn't have money. How can you make something with almost nothing? It's a good news, but it's a problem to begin to say we have to make a price for that, because maybe there are other buildings, and we talk a lot of this. It's other buildings like we say. I mean, for example, the Salk Institute of Louis Kahn. No, there's a lot of money. It's people with money doing that. So say no. Today is not possible to say this is okay. No, I think the architecture is a temporal, and then the important thing is about all the elements that need a building. No, I'm thinking a lot of this idea of a temporal building. What the building will be with the space, with the connection of the materials, with the structural ideas, with the strong of the experience. And then if it's for somebody that had money and make an hotel or making like the Salk Institute, or it is like, no, we have to go of a marginal architecture. So I think as a jury, and I think before that this is very important, the people that before all these people that is behind, that are the assessors, that the denominator that bring that is a very important big first selection, because it's not about obvious ideas of what kind of architecture. So that is very important, and it's very important in the curation. No? And with that, I think in our case now, as a jurist, is all the time thinking to forget that and to understand really in every project what is important things that happens and don't depend of the age you are living. It's more about why and how you make a strong space that is important.
Also, there's another, maybe to explain this. If we see, I think these 257 projects, what did you say? Projects. I mean, they're already all like this, really, most of them, I would say, exceptional cases in their context. No? What I think is important, the role, and that's why I think it's fundamental that there's an archive, they're all accessible to anyone, they're all solutions to different problems. But ultimately, I don't know if anybody has the number of how many buildings get built in the Americas every day. Probably more than 256, right? Like every single day between all the programs we're talking, it's an enormous number. What I think is important is in any one of our contexts that we somehow, by sharing information and sharing what is considered good quality, that the whole, you always have exceptional projects everywhere in every era and really bad projects in another era. And this is where I need you to hold this for me. So if you have the two extremes, no? What you want to do in any society or in any school, in any educational program, is to try to make the difference between the two. Everyone else is somewhere in the middle. So there's this very fat drop. No, if you have a very long drop, and also if the drop is very long and you have a lot of water down here, all bad architects, no? So you want to have two, like a double drop with two little points, exceptional architecture, very bad architecture. And the middle architecture is really good quality architecture. So I think ultimately prices are not about so much the price itself. It's how does that price become a focal point for all the rest of the architecture that is happening at every program. And in that sense, I think having an X-ray of all these different programs, all these different scales, all these different budgets, becomes a vitrine that I think elevates everything for all of our colleagues, hopefully.
I'm going to jump in here too. I'd like to go back to your question, which was amazing. It spurred all of this conversation from this perspective of creating the prize and the way we did it, but also where we did it. If you know our school, IIT, as we call it, Illinois Institute of Technology, College of Architecture, the school was created by Mies van der Rohe when he closed the Bauhaus and came to the United States, now nearing on 100 years ago. There was a clear school of thought. I think that's the school, when you're referring to it, school of thought. There was, beyond the thinking, there was also a vocabulary, certain materiality that was very much embedded in the time, the idea of socialization, the idea of standardization. The modern was a social movement primarily. And I think Mies and his colleagues in many different vocabularies, but felt that they were stepping up to respond to the demands and the character of their age. What happens with the schools of thought when they become stylistic is that they lose the soul and can be reproduced and be acknowledged and accepted because they look like the school of thought, but very easily lose not only the motivations, but more importantly, the actual qualities that when something is driven by soul is embedded. I really thought, along with Phil Eretz, who was our dean at the time, had come from Europe, to tell you the history. He had been the head of the Mies jury in Europe, Mies Prize, which was started as part of the Barcelona Olympics 25 years before, as a legacy project of the Barcelona Pavilion, which was rebuilt at the time. And the idea was to create new energy. It's sort of the same thing you're thinking about, but not a style, but a school of thought that has to do with the reality of what we do as architects and how many levels that we have to function at to produce something that's performance will be delivering all the things that we need, humans and our environment needs to function. So that's why you're seeing, in the lack of a descriptive direction to our nominators or jury, beyond simply saying the best, built new works of architecture defined very widely, landscape, urbanism, infrastructure, that the diversity of what you're seeing here is actually a consistency, and that these projects are all done with amazing consideration, I call it, carefulness, realized. I mean, what a wonderful thing to be able to grab, the world and say, man is actually doing all these amazing things right now. And every single one of these is a school of thought, and collectively they, are a crescendo. They're a cacophony. They're more than optimism. It's like, we can do it right. We can make our contribution in our time, grab the issues that are so dire, that are so impactful, and as physical planners, as designers, in some small or some large way, make our mark and make the world a better place. So I'm coming from the school of style, which was kind of falling apart when I studied there in the 80s. We were talking about how the 80s was a really, you think now is difficult. Oh my God, there was a total mess in the 80s. Everything was going every which way, because there had been these school of thoughts that people were like, what's the next one? What's the next one? And we had postmodernism, then we had deconstructionism. And, of course we were post-structuralists, but, what was the real thing? Just, we're building. We're using materials, we're using resources. I think the thing that's consistent in all of these projects is a sensitivity to their material. If you look at them, our students study this. We have a class where they kind of become a jury and they look at all the projects. They're almost all a singular material, very interestingly. And most of them also, the structure is very clear. How is the structural material used? And what's the primary material of the project? Also, use of what we have. More and more of the existing, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's artifact, whether it's building, use what we have before we build something new. The agency of change. That's hard to see in the pictures. That's one of the wonderful things that we get to know by going out and hearing and listening. The agents of change, many of these young people that are here in the room, the practices, they're the ones that are making it happen. The architects are making it happen. But then when you get to larger scales and larger impact. There are institutions, there are individuals, there are clients, if you will. Client is a user, but also client is a dreamer who engages the designer in creating the vision, but has the passion to see something all the way through. This is the consistency of all the projects that are here in front of you. And how to make that a school of thought is, it's a little hard to, to define that, to nail that down. But I think when you just sit there and look, you're like, these are all excellent. Any other questions?
I saw him. Sorry. Hola, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Jeffrey Paredes, soy estudiante de arquitectura y fotógrafo de arquitectura. Y mi pregunta viene un poco, ¿cuál es el futuro del premio MCHAP? O sea, de las futuras generaciones, las próximas obras, de las próximas ediciones. Porque hace unos meses hablaba con José Fernando Gómez de Natura Futura, del ganador de la obra El Centro Productivo Las Tejedoras en Ecuador, y él como autor me decía que este tipo de proyectos no llegan como a este tipo de premios. Y qué bueno que haya llegado, qué bueno que haya sido premiado, qué bueno que haya sido como decía Mauricio, como decía Mauricio, que no solamente se premia la obra, se premia como al movimiento, a la idea de los recursos, de el reciclaje, de hacer mucho con poco. Creo que Ecuador es un gran ejemplo de eso en la práctica que se hace en Ecuador, como la cabina de la curiosidad, o en Argentina acá, como el taller A77, ¿no? Que tienen grandes proyectos, se podría decir como sociales, como reutilizables, reciclables, en la economía, pensar en el factor de la economía. Y mi pregunta viene en eso un poco, ¿no? Hablaba también con David Barragán de Ecuador. O sea, yo soy fotógrafo y tuve la oportunidad de recorrer un poco estas obras y hablo un poco desde la experiencia, el caminar en estas obras en donde la gente no habla castellano. Por ejemplo, en Perú, el proyecto Semillas, el laboratorio Mencoriari, y llegar hasta esos lugares, o sea, que son muy lejanos a la capital, muy lejanos a la ciudad, que gente que no habla castellano, niños que no hablan castellano, ese entorno, y hacer arquitectura en ese tipo de entorno. Entonces, un poco mi pregunta es, ¿cuál es el futuro de las próximas ediciones, las próximas premiaciones del Premio MCHAP? Gracias.
Contesto en castellano. Lo que preguntás es imposible de contestar. Yo creo que ninguno de nosotros sabe, y también con lo vertiginoso como está cambiando el mundo, es imposible saber cuáles son las próximas ediciones, incluso esta que todavía no está cerrada. Maybe I should speak in English, sorry. No, he's asking about the future of the prize, like what are the next editions, and I'm saying it's impossible to answer. The world, probably architecture is always a little bit, it's always like a step behind, which is also why I think all of us are somehow forced to think ahead. And that's why I meant before about, it's very interesting, a lot of the projects we have been seeing are projects that are not constrained to one moment. Like we do have a sense, and we felt it in a lot of the projects, there is a sense of adaptability for a lot of projects that people are understanding. We can no longer build and throw away and build and throw away. So things that we get built, the energy we put into buildings, in many cases, it makes sense to think about an architecture that can outlast that particular problem. So I have no idea, if the architecture that will be built in the next 5 years is going to respond to the world we will have in 5 years. There's no way, I think any of us can know this. But what makes me optimistic is to realize that because we don't know and because we're becoming aware of that enormous speed of change, we're also integrating that into the way we think about our buildings, the way we think about the strategy of a building that will break ground in 3 or 4 years.
Yo también voy a contestar un poquito en español y luego en inglés. Yo creo que al revés, hay un problema de visibilidad. Bueno, estamos a favor de una visibilidad por las redes sociales, donde sí se está viendo el trabajo que hay en otras partes, en lugares difíciles de encontrar o caminar, que no es la misma realidad que hace 10 años. No estaría de acuerdo con lo que dicen tanto los de Ecuador, ¿no? O sea, decir, al revés, ahorita hay una profunda visibilidad a lo que se está haciendo en esas partes. De hecho, el gran problema es que se empieza a tomar decisiones desde un tipo de vista social y no arquitectónico. Y desde ese lugar también eso hace un daño al entendimiento de la arquitectura en el buen sentido. Es decir, tiene que haber una calidad importante en la arquitectura, y no solamente porque es una obra social, premiarla, porque eso es algo que está pasando en el mundo y hay que tener cuidado. I say that we have some problems now because maybe it's very good we have visibility about these kind of buildings that are in very difficult places to see. That this is a good news. But in the other side, sometimes there is some premios for prizes for some buildings that maybe they are not good architectonical, but they are in a good way social. So in the political agenda are okay. And I think this is a very, very red light that we have to stop, because the important thing is make good space and good architecture. Good news that happens good architecture in poor areas and dignity for everyone, dignity of the space for everyone. But we have to never have a political agenda. The important thing of a prize is how come you really have a really quality of and I say again, a temporal architecture that helps it never knows for the people how they will use it in the future. No?
Hi, my name is Madi Kapsuk. As you talk about the changing through the decades in the discipline and industry of architecture, I was wondering, what do you think about the dynamic in these contemporary architecture studios? Do you think that the traditional vertical order, that hierarchy, that the traditional studios, big ones especially, are having still space in contemporary practice, or are we moving through a more horizontal dynamic? It's a rather personal one.
I will say something and then they are running the practice, so they should say. But again, my work as a curator, observing how the practice has changed, we have changed a lot from a kind of star architecture where the office gets really the name of the person, to collective names, to a lot of studios that are a duo, like already there is a kind of duality at the top, even if you might say still as a kind of hierarchical organization, but then is a system of, or because of the size of the practice, or because of from the beginning, there is a kind of duo, and or maybe even more, like there are groups of, and so I think that's already happening. That's already happening, that the kind of collaborative, and then we're, again, I think we have thinking as everything is decided in the architectural office, where we understand very well that at this point, how many other people are part of the conversation, the engineers, the landscape designers, and so on. So to me, is already a very horizontal practice, but I don't know, they are the architects, and I can say.
I think so too. I'm very, that's also makes me very optimistic that for sure the model is changing, but also I think it is important to, I'm in favor of collaboration, but I'm also in favor of authorship. No, I do think it's important to have people say, this is my opinion. Ultimately in our field, I believe whatever we say with our mouth is not important. Like our language is architecture. Like do it. That's your expression. No, build it, and that's what is so fantastic. I think also about this prize is not about what people, their intentions they have for architecture. So how could you get that intention, pass it through the, storm of going to reality, the translation into reality, and what were you able to put out there in the world? No, and that's what we see. We see that thing living in the world without the architect saying anything. No, does it stand or does it not stand? To get to that, I think there are people who can do it alone. There's people who can do it collaboratively. I don't think there's a model, and that is the beauty for all young people, that you make your own model. Ultimately, whatever it is, the formula, good architecture is what Maurice is saying. A good thing in the world will speak for itself, independent of how it got there. But definitely, I think there is a lot more. Independent of one person, 2, 3, 10, shifting associations, collaborations, I do see there is a much kinder discipline happening out there. Like, I think we're nicer to each other. I think we're nicer to the rest of people involved, where projects are somehow kinder to the place where they set foot on. I hope I am right, and this is generalized.
Only there is not rules. So some people wants to be together, five people, great. Someone want to be alone, great. The important thing is make good architecture. And maybe the people that is alone, but have a very interdisciplinary work, people inside, no? The engineer, the structural, and the social, the philosopher, and the biologist. I mean, it's important, the connection, and to talk with many people to make architecture. That's true. But how you make your own practice is very personal, and it's nice that you have all these different opportunities. And it's not new. I think they say it's new, but if you see in the history, it's many groups that were together. No?
With that, I suggest that we adjourn to a more convivial setting downstairs, and we invite you all to come. I want to thank, first of all of you for being here. I understand this is right in the middle of your summer break, so this is terrific. We're really touched. It's very moving for us that you would come to be with us today. And I want to have everyone in the room help me thank our jurors who are giving of their time and their energy over this whole year to shed light on excellence in architecture. Where are we going specifically?
Los esperamos en el pabellón, en el patio del encuentro, que es acá mismo en la planta baja. Los invitamos a bajar por este ascensor y salir por el hall de Sáenz Valiente e ingresar nuevamente. Gracias.
Thank you.